Marketer of the Day, episode 608, Conversational Copywriting. Be authentic, love your customers, and build long-term relationships for increased sales with Nick Usborne.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. If you're looking to make sales online and have those web pages with that ever so elusive, persuasive language and write copy that sells and have that salesmanship in print, then you're going to want to sit up and pay very close attention to our interview today. And it's with Mr. Nick Usborne, who is an expert in copywriting and web writing. He coined this term called conversational copywriting. And just to start us right off the bat, if you want to get a free guide to this thing called conversational copywriting that we'll be unpacking today, you can claim your copy at conversationalcopywriting.com/marketer. And so Nick and his term conversational copywriting is basically the secret of his success. And he's here today to share his approach to help you write persuasive and effective copy for clients. So Nick, glad to be talking to you.
Wow, Robert, thank you for that. Thank you for the introduction.
You're very welcome.
You made me sound good.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? And so, yeah, I mean, this whole thing about, the salesmanship and copywriting and, sales letters and all this stuff, it's, I mean, as you know, a lot of people out there are stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Because they have this really good book, course, coaching, app, platform, whatever they want to sell, but then maybe the language they have on that web page or the way they speak about it is not exciting, but then they're afraid of going too far onto the other end of things and being like the cheesy used car salesman,
right,
and using super hypey language. So I'm excited to jump in and hear about how you kind of find that sweet spot and about your process and your way of thinking about this whole writing thing and defeating that blank page syndrome and all those fun things. So tell me about yourself and tell me about this conversational copywriting thing.
Okay, so I've actually, this makes me sound really old, probably because I'm really old, but I started doing, next year is my 40th anniversary as a professional copywriter. So I've been doing this forever now. And things have changed. It used to be like before the web, when I was writing print and my friends were writing for TV and radio, we were kind of pretty pushy. We were kind of pushing our sales messages at an audience through TV, through print, stuff like that. Then along came the web. And the web really, in many ways, changes everything because it's not a one-way broadcast medium the way TV is or radio or print. In fact, as individuals, as consumers, we get to publish on the web as well through our Facebook pages and our blogs and wherever else. So the whole kind of landscape of how you sell and how you pitch has changed in the online world. And you're right when you pinpoint that whole thing about copy and copywriting and sales copy, because whatever your business online, ultimately, it's the words that do the heavy lifting when it comes to making those sales for you. You can't sell stuff without words online. Hey, it could be video, it could be audio, but it's still words. And how do you get that right? How do you make the sale in a way that is compelling and persuasive, but not like in that old school broadcast, or like you say, the used car salesman, which sounds cheesy. And is often it's like off-brand. A lot of companies we start online, we don't want to sound like that. It's not the kind of impression we want to give that we're this kind of pushy, shouty kind of business. But we also want to be persuasive because we've got to sell our products or services if we're going to survive as a business and if we're going to serve our customers. So that is, I guess, the jumping off point, the starting point of conversational copywriting. And I call it conversational because some people say to me, "Oh, Nick, does that mean this is second best? It's not as good as real copywriting?" And the answer to that is absolutely no, it's not the case. I think conversational copywriting is far more powerful. And it's because we can be incredibly persuasive in conversation, like, hey, with family, with friends, in a coffee shop, in a bar, at home, or over the kitchen table. You can sell, you can persuade to friends and family in a way that is very persuasive conversationally, but is not cheesy, is not using kind of that old school sales approach. So that's what I teach for companies is like, hey, there are ways to be persuasive without being cheesy, without being pushy or manipulative. And companies, like, I get a lot of interest because people are saying, yeah, that's exactly what I want. I want to be super persuasive without coming over as a creep. So that's what I'm trying to help people with.
So what I'm hearing from you is simple, personal language, and you mentioned you want to talk to these prospects, these customers, in a way that's similar to a family or a friend. And what I'm getting from you saying that is when you talk to that family, that friend, that coach, that mentor, that trusted advisor, your guard's down, there's more trust. You don't have to pick apart or decode all this complex language. It's direct. It's in the just kind of getting to the point way that things should be said. Is that on the right track?
Oh man, you've thought this through, haven't you? Because like you're hitting all the hot spots there. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. It is this whole business of finding that sweet spot where you can be persuasive, and yeah, conversational language is very disarming. It does increase levels of trust. There's a whole bunch of like neuroscience behind this as well. If you're confronted by a used car salesman or someone knocks on your front door trying to sell you something, there's chemical stuff that goes on in your brain. You can feel it, right? If you're talking to a used car salesman and they push too hard, you can actually physically feel kind of defenses going up inside yourself, right? You can feel you're creating this distance, you're defending yourself. And this is your amygdala. This is part of your reptilian brain defending you from this aggressive salesperson. Our amygdala defends us against aggression. And that has been the weak spot of traditional copywriting, is when you push too hard and you shout too loud. It triggers these defenses in our minds, and we cease to trust. We don't engage. We step back. And so then they push and shout harder and harder. And sometimes we give in and we buy, but then we often have buyer's remorse. Hey, we can fall back on the dating analogy. If you go into a bar and you want to pick someone up for a one-night stand, you'll use certain language. You'll use your tips and tricks you've had from your handy online course on how to pick up boys or girls in bars or whatever. But if you're thinking, you know what, I'm not after a one-night stand, I'm after a relationship, then the conversation you have is going to be very, very different. It's going to be, it's not going to have your tips and tricks and pick up tips in there. If you want a relationship, your whole approach, your mindset, the emotions you bring to it, the language you use, the tone of voice you use, your body language, everything changes. And it's the same online. If you're just interested in ripping as much money out of someone's credit card as you can in the next 12 hours, then knock yourself out. But that's not going to be, you haven't created a lifelong relationship with that person. They're going to hate you in the morning. So that's what I'm all about, is that, yes, tap into the power of the words, but as a good copywriter, you don't have to learn the tips and tricks. I think that's what people, I did a search on Google yesterday. I was writing a blog post and I searched for things like copywriting tips, copywriting secrets, copywriting techniques. And I got probably like 500,000 results combined. And it's like everyone's after the easy button, everyone's after the tips and tricks. But that's like the speed dating version. You're actually far better off of just sitting back and saying, you know what, if this were my neighbor sitting across the kitchen table and we were having a coffee and I were trying to sell him or her on this product or service, how would I talk about it? Given that I'm going to be enthusiastic about it naturally because I love this product or service I'm selling. But how would I do that? What kind of language would I use? Because I sure as heck am not going to sound like a used car salesman with a neighbor in my own kitchen. Hey, I come across this. I was doing, some copywriter was asking me to help with her work. And she was an email. It was a promotional email. And the first half sounded really kind of friendly and neighborly, like she was talking to me one-on-one as a real person. And then right at the end, she kind of slipped into this, oh, by the way, offer expires midnight tonight. price doubled, and it was like, I was like, hey, what did you do there? It's like you're trying to be two different people. and when you close in that way, all of a sudden, I don't trust who you were before.
And so what was the mistake there? Was a more graceful transition required, or should that sales pitch, that call to action, been more toned down so that way it matched the first part, or how could that have been corrected?
Yeah. So the second part where she said, offer expires midnight tonight, price doubles in the morning. It's just the tone and pace. It's just like, whoa! It was just like this massive disconnect in her tone. The first half, she was my friend. It sounded really kind of smooth and simple and engaging, and I felt trust and warmth. And then suddenly it was bang. It was like a Ginsu knife salesman on late night TV. So yes, if there is a deadline, she should communicate it, but communicate it in the same tone, as if she's still talking to me across the kitchen table. I'd like, oh, hey, by the way, this thing, and give me a reason. There was another project I was looking at somebody's work for, where they were selling it's like putting the garden to bed for the winter, preparing your garden for the winter. And it was actually the same thing. It was ended up with this very brutal, kind of harsh, call now before it's too late kind of thing. And I said, no, you don't have to do that kind of salesman thing. What you can actually do in that circumstance is say, hey, winter's coming. The first hard frost is on the way. And after that, we can't come out and help you with your garden. So instead of it being like a direct marketing rush, hurry, it was, hey, winter's coming. We can't do it after the first hard frost. So it became a natural urgency as opposed to this kind of direct response created urgency. But mainly it's about the tone of voice, I think.
Yeah, and so it seems like, so you're saying it's about that tone of voice, and what I'm kind of getting from this is that maybe the shortcut, the mistake, are all these people who are using the swipe file, who are using those canned templates, and maybe we want what that cookie cutter template that says price doubles in the morning, like that's the gist of what we want to say, but maybe we need to refine it a little bit so that we're saying the same thing, but in a more conversational tone of voice. So if we, instead of saying, act now, expires at midnight, price doubles in the morning, maybe you'll say, well, if you come back tomorrow, the price will be more, and here's why. Or I really want you to not wait and take action on this right now, because if you wait, this bad thing will happen, but I care about you and your well-being in your business, and here's what you'll get when you get this. It just sounds like the point you're trying to make is still there. We just need to make it a little less rough around the edges.
Exactly right. I mean, it's like it's like we've spoken about this for hours in advance before this call, but we haven't. But it sounds like you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're feeding it back to me better than I'm feeding it to you.
Cool.
So yeah, and hey, my background, just to be clear, the first 20 years of my career, I was a direct response copywriter. I wrote direct mail. So I know the tips and tricks. I know the techniques. And yes, I know that, say, urgency or scarcity, these are very powerful. And within the framework of conversational copywriting, I still use things like that because I know they make a huge difference. They really and truly do. Human psychology is kind of weird and sometimes like super simple, is that if the price is going up tomorrow, a ton of people will buy today. There's an urgency, there's a deadline. It does work. But like you say, it's just a matter of how you phrase it. And instead of grabbing it from the swipe file, you say, hey, if I were still talking to this friend or neighbor across the table, how would I phrase this? How would I put this? And you put it in the same conversational tone. So you're still disarming, you're still maintaining trust, you're still engaged at an emotional level with the reader. And that is, everything you're saying back to me is you understand what I'm saying precisely. And this, I think, is super important for any kind of business where you want to build a long-term relationship with your client. You mentioned earlier coaches. If you're a coach, then that relationship with the people you're coaching is built on trust, right? When you get on the phone as a coach, people have got to trust you. It's like being a therapist in a sense. People have got to trust you if you're going to be their coach. All right. So if that's the case, when you are marketing your services as a coach, you can't be some kind of loudmouth creep in your marketing. And then when someone signs up, say, oh, you know what? Forget the creep I was before. I just do that to sell you. I'm actually a good guy. You know what I mean? You got to market the way you are. So any kind of service-based or long-term business, any kind of heart-based business where you actually care about your audience and you want a long-term relationship with that buyer, then you absolutely need to market in the way that you are so that they get a sense of who you are and they trust you before they buy.
So what I'm hearing from you saying that is to be consistent, so that way you're not going in and out of cheesy used car salesman mode, and then also to have that personality, so that way, like you're not just words on a page or a video, you're a character, and you speak in a certain way, and like tell me if you've heard or if you've experienced this, but sometimes I'll read an email from a really good, a really slick marketer, and I'll be reading it and I'll hear the words in my head, and if I know the person or I see the person on video, I can more or less like hear that person's voice in my head, in my imagination, as I'm reading the words in that email or on that webpage.
Yeah. And that's perfect, because now it's the real person that's shining through. I mean, a cautionary note I would make is, and I'm sure you've received these emails as well, is like I'll get an email, because I sign up for a lot of stuff just to see how other marketers do their pitches. And so I'll sign up for like digital marketers and they got some product or service. And then I'll get an email like saying, oh, hey, Nick, I was just thinking about you this morning. And I stopped dead because I think, no, you weren't. This email is part of an automated sequence. Don't lie to me. Don't tell me. Don't. Is this like there's conversational language, which is the real thing. And then there's the kind of false buddy conversational language where marketers talk to me like I'm their long lost buddy, but we're not, we're strangers. And then they say things like, I was thinking about you this morning because I know you're interested in our super duper service, but you haven't signed up. No, you weren't thinking about me this morning. This is part of a funnel that was written months or weeks ago. Don't use kind of false conversational tricks, because again, it just becomes trickery. And as soon as I sense like, hey, this guy's being all buddy, but he's a stranger, why is he talking to me this way? Then again, it feels off. It's just a different version of the used car salesman.
Yeah.
So it's that sincerity that we're going for. And hey, another cue to this. I was in a mastermind group a while ago, and there was somebody in the group who was having trouble with their business, and someone else in the group asked this wonderful question. They said, "Do you love your customers?" And this guy just like paused because no one had asked him that, and I thought it was such a powerful question. And he was like in a hot seat in the mastermind, and he said, "Yeah, I really do. I really do like and respect and love my customers." And that kind of turned everything around. And I think that when I look at the best writers, the best conversational writers, the best copywriters, they write with enormous respect for their readers, for their audience. A second-rate copywriter, a cookie-cutter copywriter, is more adversarial. It's like, can I get this person to take their credit card out? Can I beat them? Can I win with words? That's a whole different mindset. And it doesn't show respect for the reader at all. So that's the kind of one-night stand approach. I think the best, and it's always been the case. Like I was recently looking back at some of my favorite copywriters from the 1980s. So I started writing in 1979. And back then, it was like a real heyday of great print copywriters. And recently, I was looking back at some of their work. So this is almost like 40 years ago. And some of the best print copywriting, you could read it out loud. And they were doing the same. They were showing respect for their readers. They were writing in a very smooth, conversational way, not too pushy, not too edgy, but just so that you felt engaged, you felt you trusted them, You wanted to keep listening to them. And like in our world of social media and email marketing, if I see your name crop up in my email inbox, if the last 2 emails I got from you were pushy or in some way you lost my trust, I'm not going to open the next email. Why would I? You're far better off playing the long game. Write to me in a way that shows you respect me and that you care about me. And then when I see your name appear in the email inbox, it'll be like, oh, yeah, Robert, I like his stuff. I'm going to read that. I'll open that. And that's how you build a business.
So have some more finesse and don't just club someone over the head. And something that I'm picking up on a little bit here is that you're good at mirroring the language, right? Like I just happened to mention offhandedly about a coach, and then you use that as your example. And I've noticed that I do that sometimes, but that's an important lesson that I forget again and again and have to be reminded of, is that if there's a certain problem that I'm looking to solve with a product or introducing that product, that I need to check out the marketplace or pull my list or do a little bit of research and see what phrases or words people are saying. Because, for example, if I'm talking about time management or focus, then people use the term overwhelmed. Or if I'm talking about, say, email marketing and people are worried about emailing their list too often or being too aggressive, they use the term bombarded, right? I'm bombarding my customers with emails. So it seems like that's a really crucial part of this conversational copywriting phenomenon, is that you need to be aware of what's the loaded language or what kind of phrases are people using, so that way you can use it back on them in an ethical way.
Exactly right. Hey, you had I was listening to one of your podcasts, Jean Alford.
Yeah.
And she talked about the 3 superpowers. And I think one of them was, I think it was number 3, was listening. So that's the first half of what you just been talking about, is you listen to your audience. And the web is a wonderful place to listen. You know, you can listen in so many different places online and understand the language and concerns and worries and priorities. And then, you pick up on that language by listening. You hear the language, and then you mirror, like you say, you mirror that language back to people. And that is, mirroring language is one of the most powerful kind of conversational communicational tools out there. Hey, therapy, if you've ever been to therapy, it's like, what I hear you saying is, and then they repeat back to you. And that is super powerful, because it says, okay, this person heard me. They heard me. And so if I were writing a headline and I did some, going back to part of what you were saying, and it was about productivity, and I get overwhelmed I'd like to be more productive, but I feel overwhelmed every time I look at my to-do list. And so I'm reading about that, and those phrases keep coming up. So now I'm going to write a headline. And yeah, absolutely, I'm going to mirror it back. Instead of coming up with some clever copywriter headline, some kind of punchy power headline, I'm just going to come back and say, if you feel overwhelmed every time you look at your to-do list, I have an answer for you, ... So I'm not trying to write a clever headline. I am, like you say, I'm just mirroring, I'm listening first, then I'm mirroring back. And this is the basis of any good conversation. Hey, if you think about conversations with your significant other, with your kids, with your colleagues, with your neighbors, your friends, most of us are really, really bad conversationalists. We don't listen carefully enough. We don't pause long enough. We're so anxious to get our own point of view across. We stop listening halfway through when someone's talking to us. And we do much, much better as in everyday conversation if we just slowed down and listened and actually said to the other person, say, hey, hold back on what you wanted to say and say, hey, that's interesting. Expand on that a bit. Tell me more about that. That's a conversation where you give the other person an opportunity to think more deeply. And yeah, I think it's the same. There's strong parallels as a copywriter. When I've been teaching copywriting for a long time now, and yeah, absolutely. One of the first steps is do the research, listen to your audience, understand the language they use, the emotions that they express. Go through Amazon reviews, go through Yelp reviews, find out what phrases they use, what excites them, what angers them, what delights them, what makes them laugh, what gets them really ticked off. And now you have the basis for the beginning of that conversation, and you are speaking to people in a way that connects, because it's like they're feeling, wow, he gets me. He gets me. He gets how I feel about this. He gets the kind of solution I'm looking for. Yes, I feel overwhelmed when I look at my to-do list, and it seems like this guy is hearing me and he has an answer for me. Now that moment there is way more powerful than the cleverest headline ever written. As a copywriter, in a sense, I have to keep trying to force myself back from being trying to be a clever copywriter, and instead remind myself to be a better listener.
That's super powerful. Yeah, because it's like if you come up with that most like clever, salesy copywriting, winning an award sort of Gary Halbert phrase, then that might make you feel good. But what's the point? What's the point of the web page? Is to keep people there, is to get people to buy, is to get people to opt in. So what's the point of making yourself feel good? But that is a really powerful tip, and I hope that people picked up on that, to just comb reviews and things like that to specifically for those emotional phrases, not just necessarily the concepts, but what, like you said, what ticks them off, or what makes them smile, or what makes them happy. And I hadn't even considered checking Amazon and Yelp for that. And that's really cool, because that works in pretty much any niche. Like if someone has a book coming out, well, you look at the reviews of similar books and you just go through those reviews, and you can easily just pick up those commonalities or see those phrases that get used again and again. And there you go. There's your Amazon book description, or maybe that's some of your chapter titles, or maybe that's some of your, even the title of your book. And then that idea of Yelp reviews, that applies to brick and mortar, right? Like say you're in an right. Italian restaurant or a pizza delivery place or something. You just look at those competitors, look at not what your competitors are doing, but what the customers of your competitors are saying, and then just tap into that language. That's super powerful. And then something else I'm picking up on, I know that we're starting to go a little bit over time here, but something I'm picking up on here is, so it seems like you are big on doing that listening and getting those emotional words and phrases so that way you connect. But then I'm also getting some of the flow, the transition, the progress in the story, because you didn't just say if you feel overwhelmed. You said if you feel overwhelmed, then blah blah blah, right? If you feel overwhelmed, right, then you're going to want to check out what's on this webpage. So it seems like that's part of the conversational thing too. And again, kind of like how you and I are having this conversation, I'll say something and then you'll advance the story along, so to speak. And then based on what you said, I'll advance it along. So there's always that forward motion, it seems like.
Exactly right. Yeah. So if I say, if you feel overwhelmed, I'm not telling you how to feel. I'm just saying, hey, if this is you, if it's not you, that's fine. That's okay. But if this is you, then you may want to read on. So it's like I say, it's very engaging, very conversational, and it's not the pickup line. It's going for the long-term relationship with this person, and it's not rocket science. It's like all of us do it. We've all been doing this all our lives. The other evening, I was having a persuasive conversation with my teenage daughter about the merits of completing homework. All right, I wasn't selling at her. But yeah, I was being persuasive. I was marshaling my arguments. It wasn't like one of those hard conversations. We had a good conversation about it. And actually, she's really good with her homework. So it wasn't that tough. But I'm just saying is that this is something we all do. We do it at work. We do it at home. We are engaged in persuasive conversations every day of our lives. And you can, and like I had the premise, the basis of that conversation with my daughter is that I love my daughter. I wasn't trying to bully her or push her. I love my daughter. And like I say, I think the actual foundation of every good piece of copywriting is having that respect for your reader. It's not about just ripping money out their credit card. It's about respecting and trying to serve that reader and saying, look, hey, if this is you, I think I can help you. And then you have that persuasive conversation. And it's not, hey, you're not necessarily in conversation, but the language you use, your intent comes through when you write text in a style and with a flow that feels like a respectful conversation.
So if you have a sales letter or a web page or something, and it's written with just regular copy, and you're looking to beef it up with some of this conversational copywriting stuff that we're talking about, is there a low-hanging fruit, or are there specific questions you ask or things you look for? Like, are you looking to make sure that there's enough emotion, or are you looking for that bucket brigade, like having those transitions, or are you looking for simple copy, or like what sort of things do you always like just make it a point to have when you're beefing up some of the sales copy?
I think I'm not sure beefing up is how I'd describe it, but I think like if I had some copy and I wanted to ask myself, is this conversational? Then the easiest thing in the world is actually to stand in front of a mirror, print it out, stand in front of a mirror and read it to yourself. Or even better, read it to your spouse or to a friend. And if you're 3 paragraphs in and you start feeling awkward or embarrassed or feel like an idiot, then it's probably not conversational. And also, it's a great way. Just read it out loud to yourself or to someone else. And suddenly you'll come across like, oh, wow, that sentence is way too long. I'd never say that in conversation. Or like, that word is unnecessarily fancy. I'd never say that in a conversation. So by reading your copy out loud, it picks up on a few things for you. One, if you're being overly pushy, you'll start feeling a little embarrassed. You'll feel like a creep, hopefully. Or if it's too like kind of business talk, business language, long words where short words would do, long sentences where short sentences would do. If your copy's like that, when you read it out loud, it'll just feel awkward. It'll feel odd. And you think, oh, wow, I need to break that down. I need to use shorter sentences, simpler words. So that is, I guess, if there's one secret to identifying or editing or improving copy so that it's more conversational, it is to read it out loud as if it were part of a conversation.
And that right there, to me, that is a 10-in-1 tactic right there, because by reading it aloud, it solves so many problems. Like you said, it makes it authentic, right? It makes it sound more like you and less cookie cutter. It compacts the language, like you were saying. Also, you end up with shorter sentences. You end up crossing out words when you don't really need those words. But then what I love about that technique as well is it smooths it out, right? It gets rid of the errors, because when we're reading text on a page, we read faster than we hear things. So it's like if we're reading on a page, we go blah, 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 and we're like looking on the page, and sometimes we get tripped up and we don't know why. But then when you read through slow enough to pay attention to each and every word or each and every phrase, and you're like, oh yeah, I read that. Oh yeah, I got kind of mixed up or jumbled up. Like that phrase is out of order or unnecessarily complicated, or I could say it a little more clear or direct like that. And then boom, there you go. Now you have that. Now you get the point across better, faster. It's simpler language. It's more relatable. I mean, ticks all the boxes. Yeah.
I think it's a super good way. It's a really good way of making your copy better. It's just that reading it out loud. And where you feel you kind of trip up a bit and you need to rewrite, that's where you lose readers. Like someone's reading down your page. They don't think of it. They're not like us. They're not critiquing your copy. They're just reading it. But if they come across a sentence that is awkward, or they don't quite see it in their mind what you're trying to say, they just leave the page. You've tripped them up. They've fallen. They've left. So it's really important to go through that process first, read stuff out loud, and make it a really smooth, easy read from beginning to end.
Eliminates those bottlenecks. So I don't know about everyone listening in podcast land, but I kind of geek out about some of these copywriting conversations because it gets me excited about writing again. Because when we try to just slog through stuff and we're looking at that blank page and we're running spell check or we're typing stuff out, that's not fun. But getting to a point and saying, I want to sell this thing, or I'm taking people from a problem to a solution, or I'm putting in a story, or I'm putting in some cool features and benefits, and then I'm refining things. I mean, to me, for some reason, that's exciting to play around with the Lego block, so to speak, and to make things more interesting and stuff like that. And so if anyone out there is ever, if you experience writer's block, or if you're stuck with your copywriting, then maybe this episode, this interview with Nick Usborne right here, is something that you want to keep in your favorites or keep queued up anytime that you want to get excited again, because there are a lot of really powerful, important reminders here, from mirroring language to having that respect for your audience, to saying things the way that you would say across the table with a friend when you have the coffee, to look at reviews of other similar products and things to get some of that emotional language. So that way you can build that long-term relationship with all of those prospects, those customers, those clients, those people that you're trying to not only sell, but help out and serve and improve. So that way you're not just one of those flash in the pan marketers that uses the cheesy 1980s infomercial language and say, pull out your credit card now. You're actually talking to them like you are a trusted friend. And then this way, now your marketing is going to stand out. Now, for some reason, when someone lands on your sales letter, they're going to stop and sit up and pay close attention, because now they are looking at something that's different and unique and that actually connects with them. And when you send out the emails and you post the Facebook ads and you have the video sales letters and all those things, then you have that magic factor that sometimes you see some marketers have and a lot of marketers don't. Well, maybe some of the marketers that don't are using the cookie cutter, cheesy pickup line, what's your sign, come here often version of the language on a sales letter. And maybe it's time to find that balance of talking in regular everyday language, but it's language that also sells them, and maybe they don't even realize it, but also connects with them and solves their problem. And so, I mean, this is all really great stuff that
like you say, it's a perfect differentiator,
right?
Everyone using the cookie cutter stuff makes you sound the same as everyone else. If you use your natural, honest voice, that is the voice that stands out. It's different, and people recognize it and trust it. So you get that recognition, that trust of, yes, I'm going to read this guy's page, I'm going to read his email, I'm going to read his social media update, because I know that voice and I trust it.
Right. Yeah. And it's not like you as the writer or the copywriter have to put in a lot of work. It's just by paying a little bit more attention, by listening more and tapping into that conversation. So if people want to not just be copywriters, but conversational copywriters, where should they go and what resources should they check out from you, and how do they find out more about you and what you have going on? That way we can take things to the next level here.
Okay, so go to my site, conversationalcopywriting.com. Anyone can email me at any time at nick@conversationalcopywriting.com. I've put together like a little goodie bag for you at conversationalcopywriting.com/marketer. And I have a blog. So I got dozens of blog posts in the blog covering all kinds of aspects of what we've talked about today and more. So yeah, dig in and enjoy.
Fantastic. So conversationalcopywriting.com, nick@conversationalcopywriting.com, and conversationalcopywriting.com/marketer. And I love blogs like that when there's some copywriter talking about something that they're some project they're working on and sort of some concept they're working on, because many times it's exactly what I need. If I'm stuck about how to explain an offer or how to make something stand out or how to add some of that emotional punch, I'll check out one of those blog posts by some copywriter and I'll be like, okay, that's my aha moment right there. That's the thing that my sales letter is missing. So we need to sometimes do a little bit of that research and figure out what is selling and what's not. And many times it's just a matter of being reminded of things that we heard about a long time ago. And then we say, oh yeah, that's a really basic, fundamental copywriting marketing concept. Let me just apply that right there and there. And it could be like that, reading things aloud or using that mirroring language. So don't wait on this. Go to conversationalcopywriting.com/marketer. There's that goodie bag. I'm looking at 5 quick and easy ways to make your writing more conversational. The deeper secrets of conversational copywriting and how it works so well. You can get instructional videos, all kinds of fun stuff like that there for free. That's conversationalcopywriting.com/marketer. There's a quick sign up form where you enter your first name, your email address, you click the button, you get your free guide, and then that starts the process of you being a little bit better than the rest of your competition by being a conversational copywriter. And that way you can stand out, make more sales, make more money, help people have an easier time, have more fun, grow your business faster, and all that entails. So conversationalcopywriting.com. Make sure to check out that blog. And thanks so much, Nick, for stopping by and dispensing all this wisdom. I really appreciate it. And I think we both geeked out on the whole copywriting thing, but that's never bad, is it?
It was great. I really enjoyed the conversation. That was super fun. I really thank you for being actually such a great conversationalist of like kind of helping move the conversation along as we've discussed this.
Awesome. Just making you look good. Please follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Robert Plank. That's twitter.com/Robert Plank. And while you're adding me, also like Marketer of the Day on Facebook by going to facebook.com/Robert Plank Show.